rock and roll, Greg. As I understand, you have quite the presentation for us, so we're going to waste no more time and let you take it away.
All right, thank you so much. Let me just jump right in and share my screen. So jumping into this was a presentation we put together in 2018. And we went and took a fresh look and honestly, as I think about it today, when Jordan asked me to speak on this, I took the opportunity to go back and look, okay, what's changed since 2018? And I'm curious because I know a lot of you participating today were maybe out here at the corporate offices. We had a leadership, it wasn't a summit, it was or what we called a retreat. And I'm wondering, anybody maybe just chat me if you were out here at the retreat, if any of this looks familiar to you. But I got to open up my chat because the screen changes when I move to share mode. I can see a few. Okay, yeah. So what I've done is I've taken a fresh look at this and looked at maybe what's perhaps changed here 3 years later. But before I jump into it, I want to kind of tell you the title. If you'll turn to 16 in your workbook, I hope that these next 20 minutes can be an interactive learning for all of us. We're at the section entitled Practical People-Centered Leadership. And let me just say that this presentation exemplifies why we founded Solle as the type of company that it is, based around mentorship. Because this is a deeply held belief of each one of us as founders, that the way to really change someone's life in the ways that we feel driven in our passion for the Solle mission can only happen through mentorship and through a people-centered approach. So when you look at ranks, and this is a list, you look at the chart here, it lists all the Solle ranks. Well, to me, ranks are a reflection. They're a number, and there's something we hope you feel really good about. They're achievements that are worthwhile. They mean something. They mean something to us. And what they really mean is that as a leader, you're helping a group of people have a very different life experience, a very different quality of life, and a very different security in life. We believe that, yes, things tend to change in society and in the world around us. That will continue. This kind of a business is a strong bulwark that, to me, remains through all those changes and all those variations. And I really love, more than anything else, seeing changes in individuals' lives, both from their health and also from their ability to lead others and see the leader within that I personally believe everyone has. So people-centered leadership is a reflection about rank as service to others. And so to me, when we talk about Solle, there are kind of two things that are absolutely essential to know when we want to share a system, organize our group, lead, work together toward the Solle mission. One is to know the scope of service that's associated with the various milestones, the various ranks at Solle. They're just a reflection of service and the reach that we have and the scope of our efforts. And then second is to actually understand what the rewards are so that I can plan and that I can see how to communicate, I guess, time spent and effort and systems with new specialists. So these first two slides that I wanted to share today, and thanks for letting me hopefully share a little bit about why this is so important to us. The first two slides give a very plain view of the scope of leadership and service at every Solle rank. These numbers are not a theory. They're not a plan or a hope based upon certain things. They're actually the averages for what is among the leadership. And in analyzing this 2 years later, you know that it hasn't changed very much except in one point, which I'll share with you in just a minute. But these numbers that you see on the screen right now, number of households or number of individuals, it's an either or process or some combination of both. These are the actual numbers that we see associated with each rank. Or in other words, when I have that rank, this is what my influence is currently. Obviously the numbers, as you can see, as they move and grow, there can be some fluctuation. Absolutely, that's natural, that's normal. But they fall in these numbers. So I'd like to just plant one more idea and then ask you to do a couple of things with me today. The first idea is when I look at these numbers associated with a rank. So let's take a rank, Soul Leader 5K, the first rank where I'm now given the title of leader. When I'm a 5K, what this chart tells me is that typically I am helping, mentoring, giving service to about 20 households. 19 households exactly is the average, or about 35 individuals. 34 is the number, the actual average. So I'll explain in just a minute the difference between the households and individuals in terms of how that number was derived. But these are the numbers at Soul, and they remain so today. You can see some variation among styles of business that you see at Soul, but these numbers hold quite true. So here's my question for you today, and if you've already done this, great. If not, take a look at your workbook. Think about where you're at right now in terms of your rank. If you know the numbers of households and individuals, great, that's a bonus. But if you know your rank, you can just start there and look at where it falls on the chart. See if this is your experience. If roughly, this means in any given month, these are roughly the numbers of people that, as we say in the book, are having a soul experience. That's real simple. Having a soul experience means soul nutrition is part of my living. It's part of my health. It's making that difference because the key is the daily nutrition, the key to the changes that we want and to prevention, maintenance, and moving forward in the pathway for all of us. I loved what Kristen Brunia said earlier today. She's got her own chart on the fridge because keeping ourselves in a good path is also something that is essential. Trust me, we in the home office, we think about that all the time. We appreciate all you do to lead. We need you. This is the way the soul mission progresses. And all of us need to keep that piece of self-care very high up in our priority list. So if you let that slip, and we've all been there one or two times, take a note. But back to this chart then. So we've got these ranks. Maybe just put 2 marks on this, and you can put a mark, you can put a star by the number, or maybe put today's date or this month and year. I'd like you to at least consider 2 goals that you reflect on this chart. One's a short-term goal. That short-term goal would be for this year. So sometime in 2021, before the year's over, if you look at where you're at and you look at the scope of service that's represented on this chart, what would be my short-term goal this year? Don't worry about the details. The rest of this kickoff will deal with that, but just put a star by your short-term goal, okay, for 2021. I'd like to have you consider putting 2 stars by a long-term goal, and your long-term goal needs to be 3 to 5 years, but no longer than that, 3 to 5 years. Put 2 stars by that one. And then in the lines at the bottom of your workbook, write down just a thought or 2 as we've just begun this part of the conversation. Did any thoughts come to mind for you about where you are right now and about where you want to be this year, or about where you want to be in 3 to 5 years as a mentor, as a leader, where you maybe feel you're destined to be? We do create our own destiny. I promise you, you have it within you if you have that desire. So any thoughts that you might have, just list a thought or 2 so that you can come back later and flesh them out, okay? At the bottom of the page. So those are the 2 things. 1 star for a short-term goal, 2 stars for your longer-term goal, and any thoughts. Now jumping to the next page, This hopefully gets our minds thinking about scope and maybe put ourselves in the position of helping a brand new specialist understand the scope of what they can do, what a difference they can make. Just as important as this first chart is this next chart. These are the actual average earnings at each rank in Solle. Might be interesting to think about what's changed since 2018. These numbers were calculated back in 2018. Do you know that here we are in 2020, these numbers, well, here we are in 2021 now, the numbers still apply. You will find people with a little more than these numbers because each situation is personal, depending on how they've structured their organization. So just remember, these are averages. What has changed is, as the company has grown, once you get into the elite ranks, the numbers have gotten ever larger. And in fact, at Solle Elite 100K, they're considerably larger than this. That's really the jumping off point, is the number that you have here. And I think those numbers are wonderful because they show a person rewards, how they match. And as I think about the scope that I would like to be involved in, I can see, relatively speaking, what rewards are going to be there for me to help me continue in that journey. If you look in your workbook on page 17, you see this little pullout, and it defines the difference between a less active rank and a more active rank. And honestly, those three things, Jordan spoke about the first one already today. He mentioned prime the pump. At simply, that's the first, he mentioned Solle Prime, but that's the first defining characteristic of an active participant. Solle Prime is a great reflection of the right kinds of activities, and it should just be a natural outgrow of a good system. And that we are seeing is certainly the case. The second point under the little active pullout in your workbook says, keep your campaign promises. Many of you plan events, activities, drives, campaigns, if you will, with your team, and we've seen with other teams. Those are another powerful tool. And when we're plugging into those, and as leaders, when we're planning those, we see a large difference in the results that our team is having. And we see the numbers more on the active side, and even higher than the numbers, even much higher than the numbers you see on the active side with every rank, with certain campaigns and activities together, banding together. Boy, just leveraging the strength of the Solle family. We've seen great power in that. And the third item in that pullout that says active in your workbook says net no cost product, user, or share. I guess that's a little bit of a business speak, right? All it really means is taking the time to actually show a person, every person, how they can have their monthly product purchase that they use for themselves in their home and their family. Because as we all know, that can be anywhere between $200 and $400 or $500 if you have a lot of product users. Showing them how that can be paid for by helping someone else. And what I mean by that is showing them, here's our system, here's how we work together as a group. If you'll do these things with us, your own product usage is the first thing that our very first goal as a team that you have paid, so that you're not ever thinking about, oh, I've got to spend my money on my product. Solle is designed in such a way that that is quite simple, with really, really good commissions on those first enrollment orders, and with programs like Solle Prime that reward sharing. So those are the three, I guess, tips or indicators, maybe is an even better word, of an active participant, and maybe can help us give some perspective to specialists about how they're doing at various ranks, which are a reflection of the people they're helping. So look again back to our workbook on page 17. Answer this question as best you can, okay? Roughly what percentage of my team are Solle Prime every month? Take a good guess, and then go into some of those new reports Jordan showed us and see if you can't get some hard numbers, make sure your perspective is a reflection of what actually is. But that's a wonderful, very leveraging point, a point of efficiency, I would say, in leadership, is to just understand where we are with Prime and helping people have a clear view and a way that they can achieve that every month. And then you can see the second question in the workshop is, what percentage of my team participate in campaigns? So how am I doing in terms of working together in teamwork to help others with Soul and to develop ourselves personally with Soul? So much can be much more fun and exciting, right, when we do it together in teams, and we don't have to feel we're doing it alone. So to me, these two charts, the first one we saw, which looks at kind of the scope of each rank, and then the earnings, these are just great, I don't know, bricks, building blocks to preparing a new specialist, and also to goal setting for ourselves, giving us a framework and an understanding of what to expect. So the next chart in your booklet, if you haven't already looked at it, it simply matches them up. And what we matched up in income is as a more active. We're assuming that a person engaged in this kind of a training is going to be more active, doing one or more, maybe two of the three, or even better, all three of those active definers, and matching it up to the scope of service. I've heard more than one leader say, you know, if you want a rank higher than the rank you have, you just simply have to find a way to be serving more people. And getting that skill to be able to serve more people, it correlates, of course, with the earnings. So on this next slide, I'd like to just give you two numbers. I mentioned earlier that I was going to share kind of how we define households and individuals. Jordan referenced this earlier today. Right now in Soul, believe it or not, this is one number that has changed in the last 3 years, but the average monthly purchase for an individual is, give or take, $200. It might be a little over, might be slightly under. Back in 2018, it was $154. So that number actually has gone up. And I think partly that's due to the wonderful adoption of systems which give people broader programs that ensure them much bigger changes in their health. And so that those average figures have moved up a little, but that's where it currently stands. An individual is typically right now in the company buying about $200 a month. A household back in 2018 was about $265. So if you wanted to write these numbers, write them just above individual or above household. The individual number right now, the averaging in Soul is 200 QV in a month. And the household, it is 367 now. It was 265. That one has increased by 100. So a household is simply defined as 2 or more people using the products. The reason I give you the numbers is because sometimes we have people in programs where we have many, many more people doing programs where their program number may be closer to a household number than it is to the individual number. And so you can keep that in mind when people are doing programs. It tends to be a lower number of individuals. And then when their household becomes involved, the numbers that you see here actually are for the equivalent rank, they're actually lower. In other words, fewer people are needed to have the rank when people are using programs. So that just gives hopefully a little bit of insight. So again, when I think about these things, we've got pages for notes. And as I think about this, within what I see in my own business activity and with my team, what changes have I seen recently in my team? And how does this relate to those changes? And how do my goals relate? So more than anything, I just would love it if we just write our thoughts to spend time later in meditation on it and in planning. I'm going to jump to these next slides, and we just have about 3 or 4 minutes left and not spend quite so much time with these, but I wanted to give hopefully an insight as we look to expand our service. One insight, we've called it power groups here. Very typically in this kind of business, it is common for a person to get going, to find that perfect partner who joins early and is active and is seeing some success. And where over time, a very disproportionate percentage of my volume comes so that I might have 7 or 8 people that I'm working with as specialists, but one of them is generating 80% of my volume. That would be what we call here a power group, where there's a lot of activity, a lot of success occurring, but it's really focused in one group in my organization. The reason I show this chart is because of the way Solle's ranks are set up, it is very typical to have 1 or 2 power groups. I mean, look all the way to the very top rank. If you're comparing the groups that you're working with, a power group is simply one that's disproportionate to all the others in terms of the volume and the activity level. And so when we look at this, why is that such an interesting concept? Number one, it shows a very key point that specialists should know, that you don't have to have an entire team of equally successful people to even reach the top rank. But you do need 1 or 2. You really do need 2. But 1 gets you in the right path, and you can work on 2. So that's one teaching, is that we're not looking at needing 5 or 6 power groups. We're looking at needing 1 or 2. It is not overly difficult. However, I think the teaching that I was interested in sharing with you today as leaders is the second teaching that I would associate, and that is what changes when I put some focus and attention once I've got a power group running and I'm giving them that flexibility to step up and lead because they're doing it, and that leader is doing it, and they really don't need me to necessarily hold their hand, as much as at the start, though we'll always work together in an appropriate amount where both parties enjoy it, so that I can now focus my time on a second or a third power group. Why? Well, because the income result or the income structure in the way Solle has built a business, since you only ever need at maximum 5 leaders to be a top rank, each position has a huge impact on our scope of financial resources in our business. If I have 1 power group and I can focus my attention on developing a second one and getting it into a similar activity level, which is possible with a system. With a system, it's absolutely possible to add the second, the third, and the fourth, and the 5th power group because I've got the system. When I add that second one, let's say I just have 1, what's really neat about this is I just doubled my income production potential. Each of the 5 positions are a 5th of my income potential. And when I add a second power group, I double it. And that's what's so neat, and one of my favorite things about this type of business. In other businesses, we may look at, okay, what are the odds of getting a raise in a corporation? And is it going to be 3 and 5%? Is it going to be, the numbers of a large raise might be 10%. But in our business, when we have a system, we're looking at things like, oh, yes, this doubles that income production, which lets me be a better leader, which gives my scope of service much greater opportunity, because it gives me more freedom and flexibility in how I spend my time. And I'm able to meet the real active mentors in my team and leaders on my team and meet their effort with complementary activity and guidance too. So notice when I add a third team, that's like a 50% increase now. Even if I've got 2 power teams, 50, not 5 or 10%, a typical raise, but 50. And that's sort of the teaching of the Solle structure. To me, the power in that, there are questions in your workbook. And if this is something that resonates to you right now, if the timing is good for you right now, to spend a little time meditating on it, just put notes down in your book and come back and flesh them out. But I hope that I was able to share a little bit about really the simplicity of significant change in our structure in our rank structure and in our structure of income at Solle. And again, let me end by saying the entire reason Solle is founded the way it is, with the products that we have and the business structure that we have, is our belief in mentorship and our belief in teamwork. And I love the energy and the feeling that I've just been sitting and listening to so far this whole summit. I've loved all of that. This structure was built for that. It was built to be a place that leverages that and leads to something that is a very, very secure future.